It sure is a good thing that the storylines always make so much sense, the characters are always so richly detailed, three-dimensional, and memorable in the Mission Impossible films, because otherwise, if they suddenly decided to start making it really important that you remembered a bunch of stuff that happened in the previous one, you'd be totally fucking lost, right? Now, I've brought this up before, but I'm an outlier among my fellow film critics in that I just do not get why the Mission Impossible movies get singled out as somehow this separate thing from every other big, dumb summer franchise blockbuster. It's not that I have a problem with movies where the plot is inconsequential, but we're only here to see big famous people throw each other off buildings, drive fast cars, run away from explosions, and pretend to dodge bullets for a couple hours. I just don't get why this one series, where at the end film Twitter is expected to stand up and go, yeah, they don't make them like that anymore. I mean, they don't make them like what anymore? Out of original material? I mean, okay, fine, it's not based on a comic book, sure, but it is based on a TV show. They aren't the only big spy movies, they aren't the only movies with big twists, they aren't the only movies where you can see a middle-aged man show off how still in shape he is, they aren't the most intricately plotted, they don't tend to have big surprise twist endings, and none of them are really about anything. The main selling point at this juncture basically seems to be, do you love big expensive blockbusters but without the possibility of unwelcome 21st century intrusions like humor, outlandish costumes, unlikely sci-fi conceits, an ideological perspective of any kind, young people, popular music with too much rhythmic bass, Chinese people, or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Well, here's a new Mission Impossible. Okay, so if you've never seen one of these before, Tom Cruise stars as Ethan Hunt, a man-shaped concentration of smug intensity and designer casual wear, employed by the Impossible Mission Force, stopping bad men from doing bad things at the last possible minute. He has essentially no personality outside of resembles Tom Cruise, friends with these two guys, and does not want the world to blow up, I guess, but a couple of movies ago he fell in love with Michelle Monaghan but couldn't settle down because apparently his one-of-a-kind superpower of running pretty fast and climbing things pretty well for a dude that age are too valuable to world security, and he's extra moody about it, which is now supposed to count as character development. Because they couldn't stay together for the good of the world, and she's off doing her own thing, and he is still obsessed about it, and etc, etc. Anyway, this is the first Mission Impossible that's supposed to work as a direct sequel to its predecessor, because it comes from the same writer-director Christopher McQuarrie, so if you don't remember what the ultimately inconsequential storyline to Rogue Nation was, don't sweat it because the storyline in Fallout remains just as inconsequential. Basically, a bunch of plutonium has been stolen by a mysterious anarchist terrorist named John Lark who wants to cause a global disaster to shock humanity into bringing about world peace or something. The IMF is sent in to identify and stop him because the web of black market arms deals involves Sean Harris as the baddie from the last movie, but the CIA is getting suspicious of them because Hunt keeps letting bad guys get away because he cares about saving people. Ooh, that wily deep state. You gotta watch those guys. So they force him to take a new agent along, played by Henry Cavill, who's big and tough and angry musclehead guy who wants to fight the bad guys with punching instead of gadgets and masks, and also punching like the IMF does. So he and Tom Cruise have to try to get along and work together while trying to target their quarry through the black market underground where nobody can be trusted, to the point where the IMF, CIA, and even MI6 and Elsa, also from the previous movie, find themselves suspicious of one another. And it's been 2 days since the screening and I already forgot what all the other plot points were. And you don't care any more than I do because we're all just here to see the space pope throw himself out of a plane, right? And the action stuff this time is really, really goddamn good. Probably the best of the whole franchise, to be honest. There's a killer car chase, a baller fist fight, a really funny twist on the mandatory Tom Cruise foot chase sequence, a motorcycle against traffic scene, Cruise and Cavill doing a halo jump that was apparently pulled off in reality, and a helicopter battle that's gonna blow your doors off. And it's all done in this very matter-of-fact, sort of real yet can't be real style that makes it all feel very raw and visceral. I just wish I could care about anything going on otherwise, and more to the point, I wish that if they weren't going to ask me to, they'd at least stop being such teases about it. See, the whole movie is really in love with extending the mask pull-off reveal thing as a metaphor for the entire plot, so you get entire story built around seemingly being one direction narrative-wise, but surprise, it turns out the IMF is just fucking with the bad guys, or the bad guys are fucking with the IMF, and it's actually just a big elaborate ruse and the audience gets tricked too, which is fine if you're going to use it sparingly, but they do it too much and the condition becomes the audience getting disengaged from the story because now they're just counting down to the next switch around and you know not to care. And Fallout does this about 5 or 6 times. And more unfortunately, every time it does so, the reveal ends up being less interesting than the tease. Early on, there's a beat where it looks like the good guys screwed up really bad and something really devastating has happened, and we know it's bad because they're revealing it in a way that robs us of a big blockbuster visual for it, and it seems like we're starting off in a really dark place for the franchise, and that's super interesting. but it's just the IMF messing with the bad guys, and what's really going on is less interesting. Later on, they even have the balls to tease both the silliest but also only possible interesting solution for the Who is John Lark non-mystery, but you know they ain't going there, and then they don't go there. Now, the actors are all doing what they can. It helps that McQuarrie is a good director but a hell of a screenwriter, and he gives everyone a lot of good character bits to play that almost make you feel like there's been some depth to these people over 6 movies, when in fact there very much has not been. The whole weird business between Cable and Cruise fighting over spy styles is especially bizarre, given that this whole series has been about Ethan Hunt as this badass who can do all this impossible stuff because he's Mr. Extreme Sports and vulnerable ass-kicker guy, but now he's got this severe ideological rivalry with Cable because he also kicks ass and beats people up, but like doesn't shave nicely, I guess. You know, like usually the rival heroes thing has to have some kind of diametrically opposed yin-yang element, but here it's more like a Hugo Boss mannequin and a J. Crew mannequin are whooping each other's ass over which CrossFit routine is most optimal. It really feels like it's meant to be more of a straightforward older guy, younger guy thing, but the series is still doing that whole Tom Cruise is immortal business, so it's just a weird dynamic instead. But it kind of works even if Cable continues to have the range of a broken clamshell phone. Yeah, you can stop blaming Zack Snyder for this one, folks. I think he might actually just be an absurdly good-looking dude who's actually just not much of an actor. And still, it does make for 2 sick fight scenes. And 6 movies in, and apart from the notable Brian De Palma-ness of the original movie, I still just don't get why I'm supposed to think these are so much better than every other action series, but this one is actually pretty above average for action stuff this year, at least. It's still frustrating because you can see the spaces where it could have been so much more than that, but I did enjoy it, even if I don't expect to remember a word of it by next week, and the 3 stars I'm going to give it now will almost certainly feel overly generous in retrospect, but oh well.